and welcome. My name is Rituparna, and you're listening to the Storied Way Perspective, a podcast where we explore the incredible ways in which storytelling shapes us, teaches us, and brings us closer to one another. Social media is a rabbit hole of stories, a gram-worthy view of strangers' lives, random information that chips away at our sanity, and that overbearing lonely feeling that everybody else has a better story than us. But just once in a while, you stumble across stories that make you stop in the tracks, stopping from strolling ahead. Not because stories are dramatic, but because they are deep, because they carry wisdom. A few weeks back, in the labyrinth of Instagram algorithms, I discovered one such space, Uttarakhand Wisdom Library, a project that celebrates the soul of Uttarakhand, not just its postcard perfect mountains, but the lived experiences, traditions, and quiet strength of its ordinary people. It's part of the larger vision of Project Fuel, an organization that collects life's lessons from around the world and transforms them into meaningful, immersive learning experience. Imagine a grandmother in rural Nepal teaching something that changes the perspective of a data scientist in New York, or a Maasai woman whose story helps a trafficking survivor in another part of the world reclaim her voice. And that brings me to something I keep thinking about, how wisdom and storytelling are inseparable. Wisdom, after all, is what we gain from living. Storytelling is how we shape that which we have learned through our lived experiences. Without stories, wisdom stays silent. But when we tell it through voice, memory, or metaphor, it travels, transforms, and becomes a collective. Today I'm joined by Mehak, who speaks on behalf of both Project Fuel and the Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. Mehak's own journey is full of layers, starting out as a teacher, then evolving through roles in communication, strategy, and digital media. She's someone who understands both the poetry of stories and the precision of data, and she brings that rare mix to everything she does. In this conversation, we will talk about what it means to gather human wisdom, where we look for it, how we hold space with it, and why it matters more than ever in a world that often forgets to pause and listen. So, whether you're here for the stories, strategy, or just a deeper connection to people and a place, I think you'll love what's coming up. So, let's dive in. Hi, Mehak. Welcome to the Storied Way Perspective, Mehak. Thank you so much for accepting this invite.
So much, Rituparna, for extending the invite, actually.
So, a few days back, somebody from Uttarakhand Wisdom Library reached out to me saying, would you have a story to contribute? I'm not from this state. I've just been there as a visitor and a tourist. And I realized I don't have the stories that you're seeking and you're looking for. But I was deeply, deeply interested in what you're trying to do. Then I said, of course, I would love to know what you're doing. And I thought of inviting you and the platform on my podcast to just understand what are you trying to do in Uttarakhand? Why wisdom? And why are you trying to gather it? I believe it's part of Project Fuel. Some of us know about Project Fuel, and that's where the inspiration comes from, which is to gather human wisdom across geographies, across the world. And it's something that we take for granted as the world moves on, moves further. We're looking at science, we're looking at AI, we're looking at how can we live in the it's a meta world with avatars speaking to one another, communicating. But here you are grounding people through connections, through human wisdom, which has been lived and gathered through time. So, for people who don't know about Project Fuel, how would you describe that? Because that's where the whole idea of Uttarakhand Wisdom Library also stems from. So, let's begin with Project Fuel. Tell us about it. Why human wisdom?
Uh, Actually, if I have to start with telling what Project Fuel is, so the answer is actually in the question because fuel here is an acronym. It means it stands for actually forwarding the understanding of every life lesson. So whatever the life lesson we get from, wherever across the geography, across the age, across all the genders. Our motive is the same that, okay, our intention is the same that we have to pass it on. Because we believe that, let's say if there are 7 billion people around the world, that means that there are so many learnings in the world that we all can collectively learn from and grow, you know. And what better and beautiful way than to share and grow together? That is what I would say in the heart of Project View lies, that we share our learnings and we grow. Of course, the medium varies. It can be either through education, it can be through media, it can be through arts and culture. But you dig deeper, you dug out more. That's what it is. Understanding of every life lesson in itself. Uh,
So why is wisdom so important for humans? Why is it so important?
Wisdom is something that I believe we all, I think, ever since the time we are born, we all absorb, whether intentionally or unintentionally. There is definitely difference between what is wisdom and what is knowledge and what is information. But across, I mean, through our experiences of going on in our lives, whether it's like going through certain experiences on our own or seeing people uh, or observing people going on through their lives, we realize that okay, maybe this is what life is about, maybe this is what the day is about, maybe this is what relationships are about. And where do these questions come from? These questions come from something inherently deep that is within us, some a kind of a journey on which we are, that I mean, I don't know, this may just sound quite it's like we might be going in some different direction, but who we are. What am I doing here? What is my role here? Uh, okay, I went through this experience. Could I have done better? Could I have come out better from it? And in the middle of all of these questions, I mean, and the answer, something that lies common to all of us is that we are not alone in this journey, And but definitely, like circling back to like why wisdom and all, because wisdom is something I believe we are born with, we learn. Wisdom is something that something sometimes we realize we already have it, and that moment of recognition just draws upon us, and we're like, okay, maybe what I've been searching for is like already within me, you know. And I needed that experience just to know that, okay, I already have that treasure within me and I don't need to, seek it out. It's like what's coming to my mind is the example of Kasturi, in deer. I mean, if I'm quoting it right, and just please feel free to jump into make this example correct, that the deer just uh, you know goes around in the forest, looking for that fragrance without realizing that it's already within itself. But maybe that run is important, maybe those obstacles in the forest are important to know that you don't need to seek it outside, it's already within. And I also believe that how certain information is important to carry out on our lives daily. For example, if I need to operate any device, I need to know what technology is behind it. Where are the buttons? What is the purpose of those buttons? Similarly, to go on in our lives, we need wisdom that has been passed on through generations, through ancestors, and wisdom of different communities. You know, uh, and no matter how divided we might be across geographies or in thought process, wisdom is that unique element of humanity which binds us all together. You know, I mean, this is completely a hypothetical example, but a community that has gone through or is recovering from the effects of floods in one part of the community, in one part of the world, and similarly another community, completely unrelated, they've not even heard about each other. They've also gone through the same natural calamity. Their experiences might be same, if not completely, but their resilience is definitely same, you know. And but and in all of this, all the testing times and everything that have fallen upon these communities, what really shines out is at the end of the day is how they fought back and how the wisdom of the community that came together.
Dude, we are in a race to move ahead, but wisdom is which makes us slow down to say, okay, to navigate the path ahead, is there some is there some guideline, is there some experience that I can rely on, which people have already walked on this path?
Right.
Or what is it that I can expect along the way? Is there some kind of an insight that I can gain from somebody who's already lived this life or made these choices or had to make these choices earlier, who've had to survive? When you spoke about the flood, I thought of the parallels between, yes, a flood, a natural calamity which we have no control over. Humans have lived in the plains of rivers, knowing well that while it can give you a lot of bounty, it can also wreck lives and take away everything in just a wave. But I think the resilience of the people, or the innovations, or the strategies that they have done to survive that natural calamity year after year after year, is part of the collective wisdom of a certain group of people. And I think when that sharing of wisdom happens, uh, through dialogue, through, let's say, somewhere a film has been made, a document has been written, a book has been written, or people travel, for that matter, that wisdom then therefore is shared and it becomes relevant to another group of. I see that, of course, as a storyteller, I see that a deep resonance in, and therefore the question also comes that we are so much so looking ahead. We don't want to look back. And you spoke about intergeneration, you spoke about people, our elders, our seniors, natives, the communities, the tribes, people, of a certain place. How relevant is therefore wisdom in the current milieu? Are people really engaging in the wisdom of people? Are they curious about other people and their stories, to know that, okay, while we are struggling with an innovation, or we are struggling with making a decision, let's pause and let's look around and see who has dealt with this. So, are people seeking that wisdom? Is that a search? Is that a need?
That's a very beautiful question. My answer is yes. Uh, because in all these stories, that are laden with wisdom, human stories, the common connection is that we all are humans, and knowingly or unknowingly, we all look for that human connect. When I was in, I think, grade 7 or 8, our social studies teacher, she asked our class a question. She asked us that we were all like 12 to 14-year olds, and she asked us that if you were given your favorite, whatever favorite you consider, right, for a week, a month, would you be like happy to be isolated? And of course, we were like, yeah, we need a favorite video game. We would want ice cream. Like we all were just crazy, back then. And one simple thing she said was that, you know what, you will not even pass 1 week, milestone of 1 week. We were like, no, ma'am, that's not possible. You give us a favorite video game, you give us this, that, XYZ, and we'll all fare well. She's like, no, because as humans, we need someone to talk with, we need someone to laugh with, fight with, even for that matter, because all that is part of us, who we are. So you cannot sustain on your own. You will look for that connection. So I mean, that whatever she said, it's like it's etched so vividly in my mind. That I'm just like telling you how is it. I think my teacher's name was Subdeep ma'am, and I believe that even though the time has passed, in this current scenario of, my God, very dynamic world, every day there's a new trend or something, we still knowingly or unknowingly look for that connection. I would say that there is this very unbeatable charm about human stories, or stories that humans work on. They always need not be about stories about humans also, and the learning they carry with themselves. I if Like right now, you and I, we meet and we have this nice cup of chai or coffee. What do you prefer? I'm okay with both. and we just crack some funny jokes and we laugh our hearts out. And maybe then sometime later when I meet someone else, I'm like, oh wow, I had same time with Rituparna, you know? She was so good. We just got along so well. And maybe I would just come to realize that sometimes it's so effortless to bond with people or to just open up with them for that matter as well. You know, these are my realizations. And then how are they adding on to in my life? I think that's a very deeper question, but deeper thing to answer for. But these little questions, these little moments, uh, these very small questions, they come or they arise in us because there is something within us that needs the answer, that needs to be added onto this what do I would say, this bag which I call wisdom, so that we are just able to do better in our lives.
I call these the small stories of our life.
The small stories,
Small
yeah.
stories. I call these the small stories. And when I talk about storytelling, when I teach people to gather stories from their life, I push them and I sort of try to get them to slow down to observe these small moments, which in them, the most ordinary moments of everyday life, which can have extraordinary wisdom, to borrow a word from your library, wisdom, about who we are and our place in the world. And therefore, how can we make the choices that we are making, and how can we navigate this world with more consciousness and purpose than just knowing that, yeah, I mean, I,
Right.
that I have nothing to look forward to, or I just have one task to finish and move to the next task. And while listening to you, while you say the bag of wisdom, I call it a bag of stories. And I sort of want to bring that parallel, or that connection between, you know, what is it about, let's say, storytelling, or what is it about wisdom that makes storytelling a perfect medium to gather human narratives, to gather people's experience or their lived histories? Why does storytelling, or how does storytelling become the perfect medium to gather, document, preserve human wisdom, and also to pass it on for other people to make meaning out of? I think that's where we're sort of trying to draw the line or connect the dot between wisdom and storytelling.
uh, I mean, again, that's a very beautiful question. uh, I'm reminded of something, and but not with complete clarity. There is this, I think, Mexican legend or legend, I think, that comes from South America. Um, and that they say that there a person dies 3 times, you know. Uh, the first time a person dies is when, like, they die, they leave their mortal body behind. Second, I'm sorry, I can't recall. But the last time, the third time a person dies is when their name is taken for the last time on this earth.
When people forget their
When
stories.
people forget their story. I think, sorry, if I'm not wrong, it's also there in one of the movies, I think, Coco or something. I and I just find that very beautiful. Today we talk about many legends from history. We talk about Chanakya, for that matter. We talk about Alexander the Great. We can talk about the explorer Christopher Columbus. I mean, of course, they all have different histories associated with them. But how do I know them? I know them because their actions, they actually created stories, and stories which are powerful enough that they were passed on, or like maybe they were etched quite deeply in the history of time. But if I narrow down the geography, I also know about certain stories in my own family lineage, that some one of my ancestors did it. Of course, it becomes vague as it keeps on getting pushed ahead in the family. One of my ancestors did this. That's how they uh, came from this village to this village, or my this action of my this forefather or my grandfather changed the, let's say, the fortune or the wealth for my family. Someone was bold enough, someone was not that bold enough, and that changed the entire trajectory. So We all are but stories at the end of the day. And I mean, if you look at it, this is Earth. Earth remains. We just come and go. What remains is what we have done. What we have done is actually, if you look, actually what like our memoir is at the end of the day a story. So we, if I want it or I do not want it, even if I feel I'm not telling a story, I am a story in myself. And my experiences that I am drawing in, I'm learning from, they are collectively contributing or culminating into a wisdom which, into wisdom bank is what I would say, of which sometimes I'm pulling out certain things, from the reserve, and sometimes I'm adding on to that reserve. So that's how I believe that the wisdom is, whenever we have to pass out on wisdom, which is again something which is collectively common to everyone here on earth, meaning the humans, no better way than choosing a story. Because stories is also something that's common to everyone here on earth.
Right.
Yeah.
So I lost my father last year, and I sort of got into this whole project of helping people document their family stories.
Beautiful.
Uh, I wrote a guidebook which called Story Heirlooms, which allows people to sort of slow down and document the stories of their life, and also make sense of the stories from the people when they are alive. After my father's passing, we sort of recollected a lot of the stories that she told, and of course, I had the privilege of documenting a lot of it when he was around, and they become family folklore for that matter. But a lot of times, people live through their entire lifetimes thinking that, did I have a meaningful life at all? Or who will think of me? And that's that whole fear of mortality, the whole fear of, did I even contribute in this world? My name will be forgotten. My children will remember me for some time. And that's something which isolates a lot of people with their knowledge as well. And when you look at that from the lens of wisdom, when you sort of sit down and pause and tell people that, oh, your life stories are important. The wisdom that you have gathered is important. Let us make sense of it. Let us preserve it and then share it forward. It adds a certain dimension to people's lives. Let's come to Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. Tell us about it. So under Project Fuel, we've understood that you are trying to preserve human wisdom. So where and how did Uttarakhand come into being, and what's unique about Uttarakhand and its wisdom that the world should go to Instagram, find your page, and sort of slow down to read your stories?
Uh, so why Uttarakhand is because all the team members, they are either from Uttarakhand or they are in Uttarakhand. So we have our office in Uttarakhand. We all have traveled.
People belong to Uttarakhand. I think
Yes,
that's why we belong. So it's you sink in deeper and acknowledge your
yeah, it's
roots.
just like I'm just picking up the common points, right? And we all have traveled a lot in Uttarakhand. But how actually it started was that I think one evening we all were in the lawn at office, and we were having a very meaningful conversation slash discussion. And then I mean, what I can recall is that we were talking about Uttarakhand. We're like, okay, if we search about Uttarakhand on Instagram, what do we see? What are the results? And the top results were about pages on Uttarakhand which were promoting its landscape beauty. They were doing fantastic job their own right. Massive followers, massive reach, very good engagement if I talk in those metrics. Uh, what we felt collectively was that landscape beauty promotion is like top notch. It's helping in tourism. But what about the people? What about the culture? Not that it was absent. There were portraits of people going on about the daily lives, or sometimes dressed in, uh, I would say, festival related attire, something like that. Occasion related attire. But that's all I see. That okay, this jewelry is there. These are type of clothes they wear, and that's how the life is. But is there anything more to that? we're like, all right, we know there is a lot more to that because we have previously worked. I mean, we have worked a lot in Uttarakhand, and why not if we try to fill that gap, bridge that gap? That was the conversation, and that was just a simple thought that let's try, let's see where we are, where we go. And that's how the thought behind Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. That is the thought behind Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. The first conversation, and why wisdom is, of course, because you know the sense of community, the people, the culture, the heritage. What all is that? It's all at the end of the day wisdom. I There have been a lot of prominent personalities who have their roots from Uttarakhand. I mean, I can even Google, famous people from Uttarakhand. Uh, but what about people who are not famous? They're just normal people, common people. Do they have something meaningful to share? Uh, Definitely. Then can we do that? We can try, you know. So that's what we did, and we are still trying to do. We are trying. So initially, when we started, we actually started with digging up the archives of our own work. We started putting out those stories, some folklores, um, and I would say even stories of people. Eventually, we realized that this is not enough, and we need to, expand. So we got along working with some interns as well. And at that time, because we were like already, we can only meet this if we have more followers, if we take in more people. So we, while trying to live up to that conversation, we also thought of, to chase the trends of the algorithm. So what happened was that we also started sourcing content from internet, and thought behind that was that we need to show up every day because the algorithm will pick it up, it will push the content to more people, we'll have more followers, and we'll then have, so and so to solve for what we are trying to do. I remember I was going through the comments, and one person had written that, so what we used to do was, let's say if we picked up content from your website, right, from your blog, so we will give you credit in the caption, and if you are on Instagram, so we will tag you also. So there was this one platform, I think Kafaltree or something, Uttarakhand, and we had picked up content from their platform, and we of course designed it how we design, without altering the information. We designed the post. There was this caption, and then we credited the source. One of the followers, they had written that, what is the purpose of rehashing this? If I'm reading here, I can read it there also. Why are you just doing it? And you know what, Rituparna? I don't know how this is like very beautiful how universe works. Few days before that comment came or when that post went out, we had this discussion like with the team internally that what we are doing, is it right or have we drifted away from what we started? You know, that instead of getting a lot of on ground stories, while we're still getting that, we have more of content which is sourced from
Curated,
curated actually from
outsourced one.
online sources. And then came that, so so the team was divided. Yes, no, we should continue. We'll come back, circle back. We were like, all right. And then came that comment, and we were like, no, we have to pause. We we all are still on the same page as we were the day that conversation happened in the lawn, but maybe our we just drifted away from the route. We need to come back. So we went on a pause. We're like, let's take a break, let's come back, but let's not drift away so much that we just find it difficult to come back. And then slowly, we were like, let's restart. Then we started with resharing the stories that people had shared with us. You know, that means that meant like touching base through those stories with our followers that we are like restarting this and going along with in the lack of the better word, what I'm getting is agenda, with the agenda that we started with. And then we realize that we are okay to not be frequent, you know. We are okay to not be regular, that matter. But we will only post stories that are relevant to the thought behind Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. Having said that, what it also meant that there is no harm in curating the content from online sources, but it should just not be only about that or majorly about that. So right now, what we do is we have very beautiful, extremely generous contributors who are on ground or they have been on ground, and they take the pain of writing those stories, sharing their pictures, and I mean, I believe that's the big work. Our work is like chotu, we are asking and then we are putting out, but the bigger part relies on the contributors. They are like very grateful to them. Some of them have shared stories about uh, you know uh, the state movement that happened because of which Uttarakhand was carved out. Uh, some people have, there's this very beautiful story about a couple, was an old couple, about their love story, how it was almost like a love at first sight. There is one story about the old town of Tiri. So the old town of Tiri, it got drowned, submerged under the Tiri Dam, and that that post and those photographs itself evoked a lot of nostalgia among people. You know, uh, and it was very beautiful to see how people, they were just interacting in the comments. Oh, you're from here, I'm from here, and all of that. Finding common connections. Sometimes a story of a writer who has shared about a school days from a very old school in Dehradun. And then I would say some 30 years junior to her students, they have said, oh, the hall is still the same. It looks, and you're like, wow, like this is so beautiful. And so it's like coming to the beautiful side of Instagram, if I have to talk about like that. But then that's what we were like, that this is how we want to go ahead when we were seeing those very meaningful connections and conversations happening. And sometimes it's not even about uh, having a lot of stories, not, I mean, stories are important. So like I'll share an like something that happened some weeks ago. So uh, the state flower rhododendron, it blossomed, right? So the official page of Uttarakhand's tourism development board, they posted a picture about it. There was a picture of the tree that, it's the official season, I mean, it's bloom, it's season year, and then they went about what they were speaking about. I was like, what if we curate these pictures from people, from our audience, and put it together? you know Not every post has to be something, I would say, quite deep. It can be light also, and something that just brings people together with minimal effort. So we posted a story asking people that if they have pictures clicked by themselves of the flower or of the tree, no matter which color, just please share it. We will curate it together and we will put it out. That was the idea. Of course, if I talk in terms of the platform, it got us engagement. Our followers engaged with us. That was
The Storied Way Perspective is designed and developed by your Storybag Podcasting Network. Podcasting is a fantastic medium that brings listeners to gather around a story. As the podcasting industry grows by leaps and bounds, we at Your Story Bag want to help storytellers, businesses, brands, and organizations leverage the power of narrative. We are not an agency. Instead, you can imagine us as a collective or a cohort that incubates and nurtures emerging story based podcasts in the airwaves. If you'd like to collaborate, commission, or create your own story based podcast, reach out to us at podcast@yourstorybag.com. Now you're talking like a true social media
Yeah.
ninja, because that's what eventually will come down to. But I'm listening to you and I'm thinking that, while the power of wisdom is so beautiful, there's nostalgia, there's root, there's cultural heritage. I can see so many different threads connecting to what you are doing or what you stepped out doing, and then sort of maybe lost away a little bit, and then
Yeah.
sort of gathered up and came back to finding a more renewed purpose. But I also see that pivoting from preservation of wisdom to or celebrating wisdom to also making it a community exercise where you are bringing people together to share their own stories, and they sort of look forward to it. So I had a question which was about, who is this wisdom for? Is this the project is for people of Uttarakhand, or people who don't belong to Uttarakhand and therefore they are curious about it? And I think it's right now very clearly about people from Uttarakhand, whether they live in the state or they're outside it. And that is sort of making it one space for a community to gather and share their common roots and celebrate. Am I right?
Uh, I would say that, see, the community is open to everyone, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if I have to say that, like, for example, if I speak about myself, my roots are not from Uttarakhand, but I have been brought up in Dehradun, right? I I belong to that state, you know.
Yeah, you still belong
Yeah,
to that
yeah,
state.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if I let's say that traditionally my roots are not from.
You're not a Garhwali, that's what
Yes,
you're saying.
I'm neither
Yes. Oh,
Garhwali
that's,
nor Kumaoni. But
yeah.
I do consider myself that okay, that's my hometown, everything. So coming from that space, what I want to say is that Uttarakhand Wisdom Library is everyone, uh, for everyone to contribute, for everyone to
Away from.
take away from it as well. The takeaways, I would say, from the contributions. Uh, what we try to do is that we only I would not even use the word only because that really narrows down it to a lot of extent. Uh, what we avoid is just posting touristy photos.
Correct.
We don't want to do that. That's already happening,
Mm.
officially and unofficially as well. We want to bring out the stories of the land, whether it is about a jungle, whether it's about a lake, whether it's about a river, whether it's about community, a person, an animal also for that matter. We want to talk about those stories. We want to talk about the festivals. We want to talk about ceremonies. Uh, we want to talk about that. Like there was, uh, I mean, when we were on a project on ground, we came to know that in the early days, in a village, so when a bride used to get married, the groom, they never bought the clothes for the day, how I would say the bridal wear, anything, no. That was all borrowed. The resources were limited. So they had to be spent wisely. They had to be utilized wisely. They were, of course, used in other ways, of course, maybe let's say dowry or something else. But clothes is something that, okay, we can manage. So that's how it carried on. Now, this may not speak a lot, but what it tells a lot is that how the community came together and they solved for the limited resources they had at that time. That how at that time the villagers they used to come together and cook for the guests. Or if the guests used to come, so they were not only like they did not only used to stay at the bride's the main house, but even the villagers used to accommodate, the neighbors used to accommodate, the guests. Do we see that happening now? No, we don't see that. So that also, I mean, when you hear these stories, at least when I heard these stories, I realized that okay, how things change, whether it's your urban landscape, rural landscape, semi-urban, semi-rural. Maybe this is across generations also. I don't know about generations, but definitely can talk about the landscape part. So that's what this is about. Uttarakhand Wisdom Library is about that we do love beautiful pictures. I want to also put out that because from social media perspective, good pictures attract the eyeball, but ultimately it's the story. So you have a story about a folklore, welcome. Paranormal, not paranormal, regular, it completely works. As long as it's legit, and not cooked up kind of thing.
So when you talk about wisdom, you also look at, people who are seniors, who are perhaps still living in Uttarakhand. I see a lot of stories written, curated by people who are younger, could be visitors or could be natives who have moved out and they recall about their family members and their upbringing and things like that. So, if I were to talk about it in terms of what I've understood by reading your posts more closely, is that while you're talking about the Pahad, you are talking about the people, you are talking about the places, you're talking about the props, like that beautiful story about the Garhwali Topi, we're talking about professions, right? So who holds the onus of storytelling? The the seniors or the younger people, the ones who've lived behind, the ones who have left the state, and I see an intermingling of all of that. So a lot of people are coming back to tell their stories or recalling their stories and gathering it for you and telling it. You also see some older people being covered who may not take that active participation and let I have a story to tell, so let me tell you my story. So how does this balance work when you are curating stories for the platform?
Uh, I think the owners for storytelling, uh, okay, I have to think a lot for this.
I like it. My questions are making my guests think about their storytelling,
Yeah,
so it's
very
great.
beautiful question. I
Thank
think
you.
the onus for storytelling, I think the onus for storytelling lies with,
With you.
I would say secondarily with me, or the person who's getting it. Primarily, it's with the person who's reading the story. Because I believe that, and I mean, something that I resonate, I myself follow is that when you read a story, the onus is to pass on that story. And you become a storyteller in your own way. That I think is where the onus for storytelling lies. But if I have to say, where does the onus for bringing that story forward, like where does that lie with? Or who does that lie with? Uh, I don't know, but for this, my mind is just working on technical ground. I think the onus definitely lies with the generous contributor, who is willing to share it out with the world because we don't know. I think because when you share your story, it's also part of you ready to be vulnerable, and you have to be very courageous for that. That you're sharing your thoughts out. People who do not know, they'll listen to you, they'll read, and then they'll perceive. They might form judgments, they might not form judgments. We don't know what may come. So you're okay with being vulnerable. So I believe that bringing forth a story, being a storyteller, the onus lies with uh, the person who is sharing the story. That's the responsibility because that's their responsibility and a responsibility that they, I don't know, it's like not able to. Wow, this is a tough question. I don't know how to like go about it.
You need to take this back to your team
I
and say,
guess,
Rituparna asked us this
yes.
trick question, right?
Yeah.
But so from where I see it and I perceived it, I think yes, putting it on the reader, the viewer, the Instagram follower, like people like me, who will make it a point to go back to your platform because we got something out of it, or for that momentary. time that we were between room scrolling, when we've stopped by your platform, your page, and we decided to spend some time. I'm the seeker. So as long as there is a seeker, there is quote unquote word in the world of capitalism demand, there will be a person who will generously share.
Mhm.
Uh, if there are no listeners, there are no storytellers. If there is no audience, if there's no viewer, there is no storyteller, there's no artist, there is no performer, right? So our existence lies from the audience. The audience, sarvopari hai, like say, it's they are most important. So the onus of storytelling lies on them to be there for our storytelling to exist. So that's the audience comes first. The second, I would say the the truth in that story, because it wants to come out, or,
Yeah.
or it deserves to be told. It deserves to be shared. The onus of that or the onus of storytelling rests on the validity or the importance of that story by itself. So therefore, a platform like you, which is honoring that that piece of information, which could be very commonplace for a lot of you, but could be very extraordinary for a lot of other people who don't know your state. So just because a lot of people don't know it does not make it inconsequential. It still holds value. So therefore, the importance of that story. And the third could be the storyteller, because who has to then overcome, saying that there is an audience, my story deserves to be told. Now all I have to do is I have to take that onus of telling it. So therefore the storyteller would come, the story, with great power comes great responsibility. I totally believe in that. The responsibility of the storyteller to share that wisdom, saying that, okay, who cares for my wisdom? But people do care. You have a wisdom which deserves to be preserved, which deserves to be shared. And the storyteller comes in the end. I don't know. That's how I look at it. And you can take back to your drawing room and at your lawn, and therefore, and then discuss it at length, that who's responsible for the storytelling that Uttarakhand Wisdom
No,
Library does.
definitely you've put it like very beautifully. And while you were sharing your thoughts, I was like, okay, I resonate with this. I also resonate with this. I also resonate with this. So I
Right.
think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop this question first, and then I'm going to share my thoughts, which I have borrowed from you. So yeah.
Yeah, great. I think that's a good way, and good. Yeah, I mean, I think that's why storytellers exist in a community, so that we can share why we're doing what we are doing. And that's very important. Let's talk about the challenges. What challenges do you have? What challenges do you face while
Uh,
gathering wisdom?
I think first sometimes the challenge, because see, the challenges are also related to the platform we use. Sometimes the biggest challenge is that we don't have pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And though in the past we have used not much, I would say not even 10 times, AI generated images. I think they just lack the human touch, for a
No,
camera.
you can't.
It's like
Yes.
so. I mean, they do solve for the occasion, but I mean, at least for me, they do not evoke those emotions. I don't know. I mean, the imagery, it doesn't evoke much in me. Uh, so I think the biggest challenge or bigger challenges include uh, not having pictures, or sometimes not having enough pictures. Sometimes we just have two pictures, and the story is 10 slides long. So you're like, what do we do? But we do something.
Story, and then maybe the format needs to perhaps,
Yeah,
you need to perhaps rethink your format of telling your
right.
story.
But you know what, Rituparna, in this, so what we try to be always aware is that we want to keep these challenges as our own. We don't want to pass on these challenges to the contributor.
Of
you know
course.
we of course request them if they can share more pictures or get us more pictures, and people are so beautiful that if they can, they always get back with more pictures. And we know that, okay, this, they have already done their best. The next challenge is of course getting the story. Sometimes people have very beautiful stories, in our DMs they share, oh, thank you for reaching out, what my grandmom used to tell me about this. I'll write about it. So we are like, thank you. And sometimes the writing is still yet to come. Of course, they have their own lives also. They get about it, and sometimes they have exams or some other occasions. Sometimes they lose interest, which is fine. Uh, and so I think sometimes not getting contributions enough, or losing contribution momentarily on something very interesting the person has shared, is I think another challenge, because I'm like, this is so interesting, we need to get this out more. Sometimes what it has happened is that I there was this one lady, very sweet. She reached out that she wants to work with us, contribute. We were like, okay, native of Uttarakhand, and married and stays in Uttarakhand. And we got on a call. This was when we had resumed Uttarakhand Wisdom Library, very like initial days of it. And we got on a call, which was supposed to be a half an hour call. It was 1.5 hour call. So she shared such beautiful stories, um, and stories from her family, of her family, of her village, or Uttarakhand in general. And then, for some reasons, she had to withdraw her participation. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. I don't want to force you. I mean, I heard those stories and I still know them. They're in my mind right now. But I know that she was not comfortable at the end of the day. Of course, she shared it, we got along. And, maybe there was that, what do we call it? Vibe check. I can go ahead and speak. So she did that. But later on, she felt that maybe, she's not like, it's not the time for the stories to go out. So she said that she would like to pause her participation and everything. I was like, oh God, what do I do with these stories? They're so beautiful. But again, I had to honor her requests and everything. So we're like, that's fine. So sometimes the challenge is that we hear the stories, but we are not allowed to pass them on. But that's fine. I mean,
it, it also comes with, I mean, again, from having worked with people who have stories to tell. And the first challenge is people say, oh, I don't have any stories. Then they realize, oh, I have stories. So they're like, how do I put the stories in words and in give it a form and shape so it's meaningful for someone? And then they either look at the hard work that goes behind it and say, oh my God, that's too much of hard work. You're asking for another photograph where I don't have, just take what I have and just do something with it. And the last comes with that courage, that I have everything, but I don't have the courage to now tell it, because it's too private, or because what will people think, or what will, they think it's too nostalgic, because everybody lives the hills to make a life in a big city, and now you're still talking about your home. And I always talk about nostalgia with that perspective, that once upon a time nostalgia was considered mental illness. But if you're constantly talking about your past, where you come from, or things which are left in years back, you are stuck in time, and that's not a good thing. Of course, we know nostalgia is not bad. We know talking about your past is not a bad thing. Now, so therefore, there are those challenges that modern world has with it. Uh, what is the way forward? Where do you, it's still a new handle, it's social media, it's Instagram, there are these challenges that you have. Where do you want to take Uttarakhand Wisdom Library? And at the same time, for people outside your state who may be away from their home state, people like me, like the way you explained, you are not from Uttarakhand, not a native, but you've lived all your life there. So am I. I'm not a native. I'm not a Jharkhandi. You're not. Neither am a Bihari, but neither am a tribal. But I've lived all my life in Jharkhand, and I still consider myself Jharkhandi, no matter which part of the world I would live in. How do we sort of celebrate our roots? How do we pay homage? How do we sort of make meaning of where we come from and our roots? So, two parts. One is, what is the way forward for you? And what is your tip, suggestion, your wisdom? Pass it on to us, people like us who want to make sense of our wisdom.
my way forward with UWL, Uttarakhand Wisdom Library, is to uh, stay connected to the why behind UWL. That, of course, there are challenges of the algorithm of the platform, but they come and go. Sometimes we do take a beating also, but ultimately, uh, we do see that, you know the that we do have the participation from the community. So at the same time, analytically, the intention is also to grow in numbers because that does solve for some questions or, like numbers. When you see numbers, you see some growth. There's the statistics, there's the data. So that way it helps, and then it helps you also to think bigger. Okay, now I have these many followers. What's more, something more that I can do? But all of this while retaining the essence behind the why of UWL. That is the way now, that is the way forward, at least based on where we are currently. In terms of uh, honoring the root, I think the first way is to own the roots. And even if one does own the roots, their roots, their origin, I would say in that manner, the next step is to own it in front of people when there is a need, when there's a time. Like if you would have asked Mehak or late teenage that you are in a, like, are you happy that you're from Dehradun? She would have said, yes, I'm happy from that I belong to Dehradun because of the nature and everything. But the city, it's not that developed, man. Maybe it would have been better if I would have been in a developed city, in a metro. Imagine the exposure, oh my God, all of that stuff. So maybe at that point I would have discarded uh, my roots, not in a good way. I mean, it's fine to be critiqued in one way,
No, no,
but not like
self-critical,
completely
yes.
discarding them. But if you ask me today, I'm like, yeah, I am from Dehradun and I'm very happy about it. Of course,
Hmm.
it it did had some challenges, but that's fine because of those challenges that who I am today, and everything that I have, those challenges have had their contribution. So I think one is to own up your roots to yourself, and then when it comes to own up in front of the world, if the world is a bigger stage, in front of people, maybe that people is just one person, you own up there as well. I think so. Ownership is the first step. Taking ownership is the first step towards it. Uh, the next is, I think, to be chill about it. You've owned it. You just go on living your life.
Now everything is
Yeah,
sorted.
you don't need to
Everything is
shout
sorted.
about it. Uh,
That's it. Live,
just flaunt it when the
accept it
time.
and move on.
Yeah, just move on. When does there comes a time when you need to stand in front of the people and own it? I think that's all one can do. Other than that is, of course, to respect your roots. I believe that, of course, everything has drawbacks. I'm not saying anything is faultless, but we do have to respect our origins. There is this very beautiful saying or thought that Deepak, our founder, he has shared with us. I mean, he has shared, and I've heard it quite often that, uh, and I'm just quoting it very loosely, so I might be eroding some essence. Sorry, Deepak, for that. That we wear the crown of our forefathers on our head, you know. Uh, and I mean, they were also not faultless, but because they were, so I am here. Same goes with our with my roots also. If I mean, they are also not faultless. Of course, any area, any community have had their challenges and they continue to have it. But because they were and they are, so I am who I am today. You know. So that's how I would go about it. That you respect it, you own it, and you just go about forward in your life. That's all I think. Simply that. That's the essence. I do it myself, so I would only share that. What I do, I would teach.
I think that's the perfect point to sort of close this conversation because I think helping people connect with their roots is something which you and I can keep talking about, but it's for people to sort of first accept. It's that first point where it begins by accepting where you come from, the people that have shaped you to become who you are today, And there could have been a time where you did not honor them, where you want to run away from them, but you can't deny their role in the making of you. I think that's a very powerful thought. Uh, that brings us to the end of this very fascinating conversation, full of wisdom, thanks to the Uttarakhand Wisdom Library. So, to all my listeners, if you are walking away with a little more reverence for the quiet wisdom that lives in people's everyday lives, then I hope you will take a moment to reflect on the stories of your own family, your own community, the place you come from, and most importantly, within yourself. So, uh, take a moment to look back at the wisdom that you have lived and let this be the nudge to you to go share, to accept that wisdom, and also to accept the story, in fact, to accept the story and then share that wisdom with the story. As the Storied Way Perspective approaches a season break, I want to thank all of you for tuning in, for engaging with me, for sharing this journey with me. We will be taking a short break to look back at all the stories that we've gathered so far, and so that we can bring you more storytellers, more perspectives, and more reasons to fall in love with the way stories shape our world. Until then, keep listening, keep reflecting, and maybe ask someone you love what life has taught them lately. Thank you so much, Mehak. Thank you for having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Rituparna. I would say that our conversation has been full of wisdom because of your wisdom-filled questions.
Well, that's me.
It was in the source.
Right.
Yeah,
No, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you enjoyed the questions
I did.
because that's my endeavor to bring it out. And for a lot of people who look at storytelling as just one way to see, I mean, it touches our lives in many, many multiple ways. So it's been a very productive first season of this podcast, and I'm looking
Congratulations.
forward to sort of bringing all the wisdom of all the of the episodes so far, and the ones that we will finish before we go into a break, and then distill that information, distill that wisdom to see where we want to go ahead next. So, thank you to you, and thank you to all the listeners. Hi, this is Rituparna. Thank you for listening to the Storied Way Perspective. This is a bi monthly podcast where you will meet storytellers, influencers, entrepreneurs, coaches, thought leaders, and experts as I ask them what can stories do in the world today. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, and everywhere else. Look out for the Storied Way Perspective with Rituparna. No matter where you listen to us, please rate, review, and share the podcast. This helps me know you are listening. You can also write to me at podcast@yourstorybag.com. I will wait to hear from you.